What's happening, everybody, and welcome to today's edition of SWACtalk, the show where we cover the SWAC inside and out. I'm your host, Charles Wells, coming at you, and we're gonna preview Week 5. So we have some Week 5 action coming at you. We're gonna go ahead and break down all the games. Going to give my thoughts and predictions on these games, and we're gonna see how these games turn out. Week 4 was an interesting week, as per usual. A lot of swaction going on. And we expect more of the same. We're getting into conference play, so things are starting to ramp up. The stakes are starting to get higher, and we got a lot of big games on the schedule this week. Two big games, one East Division, one West Division. So, and, division races will start to be impacted now. So before we get started, as usual, the socials are in the description down below. Facebook.com/SWACtalk, Instagram.com/SWACtalk. SWACtalk76@gmail.com is the email address. Also, don't forget to check out the podcast on anchor.fm/SWACtalk, Spotify, Stitcher, Breaker, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. And since you're here, if you haven't already, why don't you go ahead and subscribe to the page and hit the notification bell to be alerted to any videos that I upload. I have a couple things that we're going to be dropping in the coming days, so stay tuned for that. Like the videos, share them, and feel free to comment. I like to talk to everybody in the comments, so feel free to comment. Let me know who you think gonna win these games this week. Any other thoughts that you have. So let's not waste any more time, man. Let's get directly into it. Quick look at the schedule. On Thursday night, there's another Thursday night game in Prairie View, Texas. 6:30 p.m. Central Time kickoff on ESPNU. The UAPB Golden Lions take on the Prairie View Panthers. Saturday, October 2nd, 12:30 p.m. Eastern. South Carolina State hosts Bethune-Cookman in a non-conference game. 2 o'clock kickoff. Houston, Texas Southern takes on North American University. That's Texas Southern's homecoming. Just so you know, the South Carolina State Bethune-Cookman game is on ESPN+. Also, a 2 o'clock kickoff in Grambling, Louisiana. The Bulldogs of Alabama A&M take on the Grambling State Tigers. 2 o'clock kickoff also on ESPN+. 3 o'clock kickoff in Itta Bena, Mississippi. It's Mississippi Valley's homecoming. The Delta Devils are taking on North Carolina Central University. And the final game of the night is most likely the game of the week. Alabama State heads to Tallahassee to take on the Florida A&M Rattlers. 5 o'clock kickoff. That game is on Facebook Live and the Florida A&M Rattler Sports Network. So be sure to check those games out. Now let's go ahead and talk about these games. We're going to start with the game that I'm most interested in just because, just for the sheer fuckery of it all. Texas Southern and North American University. Now, I reached out to North American University because I had never heard anything about them. Come to find out they're in Houston, Texas, and their nickname is the Stallions. They have a 3-2 record, and that's all I have. You know, I tried to reach out and see if I could get any information on some of their players and things like that, but no dice. So we do know they're 3-2. They played Lamar at the start of the season, and they got blown out. I think their last game was against Southern University Shreveport, and I believe they won that game. So not a lot to take from that, but this team should not be much of a challenge for Texas Southern. I don't believe the game will count in any statistics or anything like that, but you know, it's an on-field game, so the Tigers are gonna get it in. Texas Southern had a really good second half against Rice, and Andrew Body came in at quarterback and did a good job in that game. And the Tigers are still trying to find their way. They're averaging 19.3 points per game on offense and allowing 51 on defense. They've given up no less than 40 points in their 3 games, so they've been getting bombed big time. 2 of those games were FBS games, and a 40 point outing against Prairie View. So defense has definitely got to shape up. The offense is averaging 119 rushing yards per game. The defense is allowing 300 on the ground. 219 through the air for Texas Southern. 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. The opponents 306 through the air, 7 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Um, the opponents are averaging 8.3 yards per play on offense, 606 yards per game. Texas Southern 338 and 4.9 yards per play. Third down conversions, Texas Southern 45%. Opponents 45% and 85% on third down. On fourth down, Texas Southern 26% on third down and 44 on fourth down. They fumbled 4 times and lost 2. The opponents have fumbled 8 times and lost 4. Tigers have 3 sacks. The opponents have 5. Just a real quick look at a couple individual names to look out for as usual. Andrew Body is the quarterback. I think he's coming into his own. He's a freshman, so he's growing on the job. He basically put Jalen Brown, who was a guy who had some hype coming out of the spring. I guess he bumped him to the side. Ladarius Owens and Ja'Cory Howard are the running backs. Keelan Davis, Jonathan Giles, Jaron Johnson are the receivers that you had to look out for. And defensively, even though they haven't really did a lot, Tariq Cooper, Andre Gibbs, Julian Marcantel, Isaiah Hamilton, Marquise Walker, Michael Battajo. Those are some names to look out for. This game should be a Texas Southern win. I would be very, very concerned if they did not win this game. Obviously, you have a team that we know nothing about, and they're not an NCAA team, so you don't know what they're bringing in. But from what I saw against Lamar, they don't look that good. So I expect Texas Southern to have a good offensive outing. Defense should put up, some stops and just have a good homecoming and get back into conference play because they need a win and they'll get it here. I don't know if it officially counts in the standings, but it counts because they played it. So I'm gonna say Texas Southern is gonna go. They're gonna hit a 50 spot in this game because I think. No, I'm gonna say 49 to 7. North American will get a touchdown somewhere. Texas Southern should have a good game. The offense should do well in this game. The next game that we have is Mississippi Valley, or as the PA announcer at the game said, Mississippi Valley State takes on North Carolina Central University in It'll beat them for homecoming. North Carolina Central is 2-2 on the season, and they're averaging 16.7 points per game. They're allowing 27. They have run for 117 yards per game, 3.9 yards per rush. The opponent's 186 yards on the ground per game and 5.4 yards per rush. The Eagles are averaging 162 yards per game passing. They have 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. They're allowing 244 through the air, 7 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. They're averaging 4.7 yards per play, 279 total offense. The opponent 6 yards per play, 430 yards of offense. Third down conversion, 29% for North Carolina Central, 50% on fourth down. They fumbled 6 times and lost 5, and they have 5 sacks. The opponent's 41% on third down, 71% on fourth down. They fumbled 7 times and lost 3, and they have 6 sacks. The Eagles, they have a bevy of running backs that they can look at. Isaiah Titan, Jamal Curry-Elliott, Latrell Collier, and Jordan Freeman are the backs. But Davius Richard, the quarterback, is also a runner. He's a better runner than a passer. He's averaging 61% completion on the season, and he has no touchdowns or interceptions this year. So he hasn't got anything really through the air. He's averaging 44 yards per. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. That's the wrong guy. Let me rewind that. Sorry. Davius Richard has 4 touchdowns. He has two touchdowns and 2 interceptions on the season right now. 128 yards per game. He's averaging, completing 54% of his passes. They have some really big body receivers that they look at. Ryan McDaniel, Travion Pratt, Deshaun Stevens, Tyler Barnes, E.J. Hicks, Isaiah Macklin. Those are some of the receivers to look out for. The leading receiver is Ryan McDaniel. He has 23 catches for 318 yards and 1 touchdown. He does have a long of 77 on the season. But they've been a up and down kind of team. This is a very young team. Defensively, Cole Williams, Noah Rainbow Douglas, Matt Stevens, Jawan Hudson, Trevon Wallace, Manny Smith, Jaden Taylor, Justin Nicholson are some of the defensive names to look out for. North Carolina Central, obviously, they got off to a good start in the MEAC SWAC Challenge, and they've kind of been up and down since then. But this is a dangerous team. You know, you don't want to sleep on them. They've lost to Marshall, who's an FBS opponent, and then they beat Winston-Salem, and then they lost to North Carolina A&T. So they haven't really had a great offensive outing in any of their games. 23 points is their high on the season. They only scored 20 against Winston-Salem, so they are kind of getting back into that issue that they had late in 2019, where they can't really be productive moving the ball. So it's gonna be important for them to move it, because Valley's defense, they're not a great world-beating defense, but they are a very aggressive defense. They're gonna stop the run. They're gonna at least try to stop the run, and they are gonna really sell out against the run. They pass defense is a little iffy, but they do a good job of at least getting stops and putting you behind the chains. Now, they can be run on, and they don't have any depth. So if you can wear them down, then you're gonna have success with your offense. Valley's offense is an offense that loves to spread you around the field. Caleb Johnson is one of the top backs in the SWAC. If you have not seen him play, I suggest that you really get to see him. The kid would be a superstar if he played at any other school in the conference. Because he plays at Valley, he doesn't get any hype. He's a legitimate all-conference back. He's 5'9", I think he's like 5'9", 5'10", 205. He has good speed. He can get in the hole. He can shake and bake. He can break some tackles. He can do pretty much everything a solid back that you could do. I would love to see him play behind Southern's offensive line. Knowing that you won't have to make a lot of moves in the backfield as soon as you get the ball, changes the way a back runs. But he's a very good back, and for a guy that everybody knows is going to get the ball, he does a great job running the football. And Valley as a team is averaging 119 yards per game on the ground. Jelani Easton at quarterback is also a runner. He's not a really great consistent passer, but he does what they ask him to do, and that's a lot of receiver screens, some slants, and he can buy some time to throw the ball down the field if he needs to. Their offensive line is not good, so that's where their offensive issue comes. They have allowed 9 sacks on the season, and defensively they have 5. But Valley is a team that they are still that team that can kind of hurt themselves. They put themselves in a good position against Southern, but they kept finding ways to shoot themselves in the foot in the last couple drives. And they just are a team that I don't think they can drive the field consistently. So they need big plays. They need turnovers. They need good defensive stops to get short fields, because I don't think their offense is consistent enough to move the ball down the field. Like I said, they're only averaging 241 of total offense. So 241 yards of total offense and 3.9 yards per play. It's hard to move the ball consistently when those are your numbers. 121 yards through the air. So they have to find ways to get explosive plays. They have to find ways to get all their guys out in space, and hopefully somebody can miss a tackle and they can break free. Defensively, like I said, they get gashed on the ground pretty heavily at 200 yards per game and 5 yards per carry. But they still are very aggressive. I've never seen a team just still get after you, even if they're getting pounded on the ground. They've given up over 200 yards in 2 of their 3 games on the ground. So they can be run on, but they're going to get their fair share of defensive stops, at least stops in the backfield. Through the air, they also are vulnerable. They're allowing 252 through the air, 7 touchdowns and only 1 interception. The opponents are averaging 6.8 yards per play and 455 yards per game. So they have their issues, and third downs is obviously an issue for both sides of the ball. 29% for the offense, 47% for the defense. And they just, they aren't able to turn anybody over. They only have 1 turnover on the season. So they have a lot to work on. But saying all of that, I still feel like this is a winnable game. Earlier in the season, I thought North Carolina Central would be maybe too much for them. but their offense is not explosive really, so that helps Valley. This will probably be I don't want to call them the worst, but out of the offenses that they face, this probably is a closer test for them than the three previous offenses that they faced. Caleb Johnson, like I said, I expect him to have a good game on the ground. I mean, he's gonna tote the load. Right now, he already has 52 carries on the season, so I expect him to really get the ball. I expect Jelani Easton to be able to get out on the edge and make some plays at quarterback. And those receivers are gonna have to make some plays as well. Jarius Clayton is the key guy. Ja'Cory Rankin and Malik Myers and Donald Johnson are all guys who can hurt you if you get the ball in their hands in space. Defensively, those guys, like I said, they are everywhere. The Dion Reed, Jeremiah Crane, Jalen Bell, Keontae Daniels, Valmise Fournier, Kenneth Martin, Andrew Bledsoe, that's a damn good football name. Those are guys that you really are going to see. Caleb Brunson as well. Those names you have to hear. Valley has to keep North Carolina Central behind the chains, and they have to force them to throw the football to make them uncomfortable because they don't want to throw it. They want to run it. So I think Valley has to go be aggressive and get some stops and put North Carolina Central behind the chains. So I'm going Valley. I think Valley can win this game. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be pretty. I think I'm looking at like a 20-17 type of game. So I think Valley will find a way to get this W because Valley is very, very tough at home. They may not always win at home, but they're very tough at home. They stand up in their own yard, and I expect them to stand up and fight in this game. This game can obviously go either way, but I'm going Valley 20-17. The next game we have is Bethune-Cookman heading to Orangeburg, South Carolina to take on their former MEAC mates, South Carolina State Bulldogs. Bethune-Cookman is 0-4, and they, the first three games, everybody was saying how they look good. They losing, but they look good. They're a factor. They're just that one step away. And then they went to Montgomery, and Alabama State handled up on them. I picked Bethune-Cookman to win that game, and Alabama State handled up on them from start to finish. And they shut that running game down to the tune of 12 yards rushing for the entire offense. And they forced the offense to be one-dimensional. And when you have a back who comes in as the conference's leading rusher and you leave out the game with 12 yards total for your offense rushing, you did not do anything. And there's nothing positive to really take away from that game, even though Kamari Averett, the tight end, had a really good game in receiving. But that's not going to get it done. This team is averaging 74 yards per game on the ground, so that Alabama A&M game may have been an outlier because we know their defense is not the best. But this team is in trouble right now. They're reeling. They cannot afford another loss. Even though this is not a conference game, they cannot afford to be 0-5. That fifth place finish is staring them directly in the face. They need wins. They've had a lot of close moral victories or they look good, but now it's time to translate that into victories. And the offense has got to get going. They're averaging 309 per game as an offense, 5.3 yards per play, 234 through the air. They have 5 interceptions, so that's something that they really have to clean up, and only 6 touchdowns. That's something that they really have to clean up. Defensively, this team is not stopping the ball. They're getting gashed on the ground, 203 per game on the ground and 4.9 yards per carry. They've allowed 12 touchdowns in 4 games. That's like 3 a game. So they're getting smashed on the ground, and then they're giving up 266 through the air, and they have 10 touchdowns for the opponents and 2 interceptions. So this defense has got to start to make some plays. This offense has got to find a way to run the ball again. The opponents are averaging 6.1 yards per play against the Wildcats, and that's just not going to get it. 33% third down for Bethune-Cookman, 47% for the opponents. You have to get stops, and you have to extend your drives, and that's not really happening. Quishon Bird has got to get going. They've got to get him back on track. Shannon Patrick needs to take care of the football. Turnovers. This team is not built to turn the ball over, and I mean, obviously, no offense is built to turn the ball over, but this team is not built to get behind the chains or have to play from behind too much. And Alabama State just exposed a lot of that. Averett and Riley and Darryl Powell are guys who are going to have to make some plays in the passing game as long as the quarterback can get them the football. Defensively, Ontario Johnson leads this unit to Kevin Thomas, Caleb Sutherland, and Devontre Hampton are guys who are going to have to make some plays for this defense. They have to get stops, and they have to, if they need to, then they have to try to find a way to score points themselves as a defensive unit. This team has got to get it done, and it starts now. I mean, they're in a one-game season every week now. At 0-4, you cannot afford to go into the bulk of conference play at 0-5 and be reeling, because the SWAC East is going to be a meat grinder, and that annual FAMU victory may not come this year, and that may be your only thing to hang your hat on right now. But that's looking too far ahead. But right now, this team needs a W. South Carolina State comes in averaging 26 points per game on offense and 44 on defense. They're 0-3 as well on the season. South Carolina State is a team that wants to run the football, but they're doing fairly well throwing the ball this year. 232 through the air, but they have 6 interceptions as an offense as well. So both of these teams are turnover prone through the air. 140 yards on the ground for the Bulldogs. They're giving up 163 through the air. On the ground, and 336 through the air. 9 touchdowns, 2 interceptions for the opponents. Now they do have a very good secondary, so that's going to be a challenge for Shannon Patrick to kind of navigate those guys. South Carolina State is only converting 25% on third downs and 52% for the opponents. So those numbers have got to improve. Neither one of these teams has done well offensively, really. Kendrell Flowers and Corey Fields Jr., who is the quarterback, they are the top 2 rushers. Like I said, Corey Fields Jr. is a guy who likes to run the ball. He's more of a runner than a passer, and he's completed 54% of his passes. The top receivers are Will Vereen and Shaquan Davis. Defensively, the name that you really need to know is Jacoby Durant. The guy's a monster in the secondary. I think he's a legitimate NFL prospect, and he's going to be a troublemaker for this season. He had 2 interceptions against Clemson. So that, obviously Clemson won the game going away, but that's 2 interceptions against a 5-star quarterback. That's nothing to be shy about, and you beat your chest over that regardless. But this is going to be a physical game. These 2 teams know each other very well. They've obviously been conference opponents for a long time, and this is the first time as a non-conference matchup. Both teams need a W. Bethune-Cookman needs a W worse, but I am so unsure about how this team is right now. They got me very, very worried right now. I don't understand, what they're doing right now. How they can't find a W. And that Alabama State game was definitely, to me, the margin was a shocker, not the fact that Alabama State won. So they have to show me. This season is the show me season, and they have to show me. So I'm going South Carolina State. I don't think it's going to be a game that even gets to the 30s. I'm going to say South Carolina State 27, Bethune-Cookman 20. I would love to see the Wildcats get a W before they get into conference play, but I don't see it right now. So let's see how they respond as the season goes on. Next game we have is Alabama A&M heading to Grambling to take on the Grambling Tigers. Alabama A&M, we know what their offense is. Akil Glass and all his receivers. The offense is, they're explosive. They move the ball through the air very well, and they run the ball well for what they do. Ibrahim, Abdul Hilaire, Brian Jenkins Jr., D. Anderson, Zabrian Moore, Gary Quarles out of the backfield, Kendrick Johnson at tight end. Those are guys that all of those guys are threats. And a quarterback like Akil Glass running that offense, he knows that offense inside and out. He's going to do what he has to do. He has his usual numbers this season. 355 yards per game, 1,065 yards passing, 62% completion rate, 10 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Those numbers are what they are, and he's going to be an all-conference guy. Garrett Quarles has been a really solid running back this year. He's a big threat in the pass game and the run game. He's averaging 131 yards per game, rushing 349 yards, rushing 5.4 yards per rush, 4 touchdowns. So they can give it to you either way. I know a lot of people look at Alabama A&M and say they're a passing team, which they are. But for the kind of offense they run the ball efficiently. They're averaging 3.8 yards per rush. So you kind of wish that number was up higher. But they they don't run the ball that much. 107 carries in 3 games. So that's not a whole lot of carries. But they will run the ball when they need to. But you have to stop that passing game. And if you can't, then you're in trouble. Defensively, it's a whole nother story. Their defense cannot stop anybody right now. They're allowing 34.33 points per game. The offense is scoring 39. So you're looking at shootouts pretty much every week. Eventually, this defense is going to have to gel and get stops because you're not going to win a championship like that, even with an offense like they have. They are 184 yards per game on the ground. They allow 5.5 yards per carry. That number is not good. 237 through the air, 4 touchdowns. They do have 4 interceptions, so they have found a way to get some turnovers on the season, but they're allowing 6.6 yards per play, which is more than their offense at 6.4. So they have to find ways to get stops. The defense is allowing 36.5% completion on third down. So they do get third down stops, but they need to start to keep people out of the end zone. Monty Holloway is probably the big dog, no pun on the offense. And they do have, some transfer guys coming in there. They have Tremel Troutman is a guy who's a big time guy. Spencer Perry is a guy who a lot of people was really high on. I'm looking for him to start to kind of to make some plays. This team just has to find a pass rush, and the defensive line has to find a way to stop teams from running. To me, they found what ails them. They found a cure for what ails them this week. Grambling is not looking good at all on offense. Anemic. That's an insult to the word anemic. How bad their offense is right now. 6.5 points per game after 4 games is horrendous. 2 shutouts to FBS opponents, obviously. 10 points to Prairie View, 16 against Tennessee State. So 26 total points on the season is not gonna cut it nowhere. Defensively, they're allowing 29. The defense is not bad. They just are put in a lot of bad positions by the offense. Now they're not good against the run. They're allowing almost 200 yards per game on the ground, 193 and 4.4 yards per carry. But anything that you do as a defense is always going to be overshadowed by your offense. They have 7 sacks as a team this year, so they are getting sacks and they're making plays. But offensively, the numbers are just not. They're just not there. 23% third down completion rate, 86 yards per game through the air. 79.2 yards per game through the air, 86 yards on the ground, 2.7 yards per rush, 3.1 yards per play, 165 yards total offense per game. That's I'm not even trying to pile on Grambling, but that's just not good. They're looking for a spark, so they're starting freshman quarterback Noah Biden. He's a big time recruit coming in, so he's gonna get the start against A&M. A&M defense is not good. Grambling's offense is not good. Somebody is gonna make some plays in this game and are gonna probably look better than what they are. So I look at Grambling. Grambling has to get the running game going. They have some very good backs, and they're just not able to move the football. C.J. Russell, Darqueze Burton, Keelan Elder, those guys are solid backs. If Noah Biden can get the offense going, this team may be able to make some plays, but I think A&M's offense is going to be too much for them because this offense is obviously very explosive, and they're going to be tough to stop. Grambling's not built for a shootout. A&M may give up a few more points than Grambling has scored, but I don't think it's going to be enough to win. I think A&M is going to do what they do. I think they're going to have an average scoring outing. So I'm gonna say 38 Alabama A&M, Grambling 17. I think they'll find a little bit of a spark, but just not enough to get them a W. And this team is just gonna have to grow. A freshman quarterback, you're gonna have mistakes, and we're gonna see if he can carry the load. So somebody has to get something going, because it's not looking good right now at Grambling. The next game I want to talk about is a game that if the last Thursday night game would have finished the way the first half ended, this would probably have been my game of the week. But because Pine Bluff they blew that game and Alcorn made a tremendous comeback, um, this is not my game of the week this week. And Pine Bluff is in a precarious situation. They won't necessarily be out of it if they lose, but 0-2 in the division, 0-2 with 2 division losses, a 1-3 record would not be a good look for a team who was the defending West champions. But it makes that 5th place pick look more apropos if you're a fan of if you are kind of on the side that the media were on preseason. But this team is still dangerous. But they have to find a way, and this has been a recurring theme in my previews. They have to find a way to run the football. They did not run the ball well against Alcorn. They averaging 165, but a lot of that is from the lane game. That number has been dropping weekly, and they did not run the ball good against Alcorn. Skylar Perry has been solid, but still not spectacular. He only has 2 touchdowns this season, 1 interception, 226 yards of passing offense. Offensively, total offense 5.8 yards per play, 391 yards per game for the Golden Lions. They're only allowing 96 yards on the ground, so defensively they play well against the run, but they've been absolutely demolished through the air. 329 per game for the opponents. 9 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 425 total offense, 6 yards per play. So especially Alcorn just second half Alcorn just ate them alive and exposed a lot of their weaknesses. They are gonna have to rebound quickly. They're playing against a Prairie View opponent that is gonna be very tough on both sides of the ball. The running backs at UAPB, Kier Crossley and Kayvon Britton, they're going to have to do a better job than what they're doing right now. They're going to have to find a way to run that ball and get that offense going. Skylar Perry has to be a better decision maker. Coaches have to make better decisions. The coach said that they didn't kick field goals late in the game because the kicker was injured. You have to have a backup even if he misses. You need to put him out there and still kick that ball. I know you don't have one kicker on your team, so you have somebody. But, that's neither here nor there. But this team has got to get things going, and they have to stay consistent. And they have yet to play a consistent game this season. They're one of many teams in the conference who has yet to play a consistent game. Josh Wilkes, DeJuan Miller, Damon Dawkins, and Tyron Ralph are the receivers who really need to help Skylar Perry out and make some plays because they're going to be called on against this defense of Prairie View. Jalen Thigpen is in secondary, can definitely cause havoc, but they're having a tough time stopping the pass this year. Monroe Beard, Kobe Watts, Timon Akins, Marcus Askew, other guys to look out for on that defense. Now, Prairie View has been a mixed bag, more good than bad. They really only had one bad outing this year, and that was the Incarnate Word game. Other than that, this offense has been sky high. Grambling did a good job of not allowing Prairie View to really snow them under with points, especially since their offense didn't help them at all. So Prairie View was able to move the football, but not really score a lot. They're averaging 27 points per game. The opponent's 23 and a half. Prairie View has been solid on the ground, 157 per game. The opponent's 108. 3.4 yards per rush for the opponents, 3.7 for the Panthers. 275 through the air for Prairie View. They do have 6 interceptions, so that's something that they're definitely going to have to clean up. The opponent's 172 yards per game through the air. Total offense for Prairie View, 432 and 5.7 yards per play. The opponent's 281 and 4.1 yards per play. Both teams in the 30% range on third downs. but Prairie View's defense is only allowing 30% conversion on third down. So they're doing a tremendous job of getting stops and getting off the field to get that ball back to the offense. Juwan Pass has been a very solid contributor to this offense and a really probably one of the top challengers for newcomer of the year this year. He in the games that they've won, he showed what he can do. He's 8 touchdowns, 5 interceptions on the season, but he's a guy who's shown that he can make plays. But he is prone to turnover, so he has to be really careful with that. You don't want to get caught up in the turnover game, which can give anybody an opportunity to stay in the game. Christian Mosley and Jaden Stewart are the two top rushers on the team right now. Antonio Mullins and Jalen Howard are probably one of the best receiver duos that you've never heard of or rarely hear about. They're both guys who can make big plays. Jalen Howard is averaging 25.5 yards per catch. He's a deep threat. 3 touchdowns on the season, 11 receptions. Mullins, 21 receptions, 256, 2 touchdowns for him. So they have the receivers and they have a big body quarterback that can run, and he has a very good arm. So they're going to be dangerous, and they're setting themselves up as a big time contender in the West Division with some huge games on the horizon. Defensively, Drake Cheatham, Trayshard Smith, Mr. Eviction Notice himself. He is a monster at linebacker. I think he's been a solid guy the last couple of years. Jesse Evans, Darius Campbell, Jason Dumas on the defensive line is still a very, very good guy. This defense is one of the better defenses in the conference, and they're tough to beat. They're going to be hard for Pine Bluff to really consistently move the ball, and Prairie View is very tough at home. So this is their home. This is a big game for Prairie View at home, and it's a Thursday night game. Pine Bluff, they need this win. They're definitely reeling coming off of that Alcorn game. They need this win, and they need the confidence. But unfortunately, I think Prairie View continues to roll. I think the score would be Prairie View 35, UAPB 24. Pine Bluff is teetering, man. They're teetering on the brink. They have a game against Southern coming up in a couple of weeks, so that's going to be a tough affair. This Prairie View game is going to be tough, but I think Prairie View gets it done, and that sends us to our last game of the week, and that's Alabama State at Florida A&M. And this is my game of the week, and pretty much everybody who I've listened to this week has this game as their game of the week as well. Another big game. Alabama State coming off of that surprise, not so much surprising victory, but the margin and the way that they handled Bethune-Cookman, that game was definitely a surprise in that aspect, not that they won. So they're coming off of that win, and they're 2-1 on the season. Obviously, they played Miles and didn't look that good. They played Auburn, which is a Power 5 money game. So, that is what it is. This was their first game against a comparable-like opponent, and they played very well defensively. 12 yards allowed on the ground. That's just amazing against a team that's not a bad team. So it's hard to really make heads or tails of their numbers right now because their numbers are all over the place and they're skewed horribly by that Auburn game. But the team that I think you will probably see most weeks is closer to the Bethune-Cookman team than the Miles team. So they're going to be somewhere in that mix. And Alabama State's always been a team the last few years that's always up and down. So this could be one of those down weeks. They never really consistently put together wins. They never really put together a lot of losses. So they're always kind of in the middle, win loss. So this could be a letdown game for them. Florida A&M is very tough at Bragg Stadium. So again, these are two teams who we don't really know exactly where they are. So it's really tough to look at the numbers because FAMU also doesn't have a lot of FCS type games on their docket. They have Jackson State game, which they didn't do a lot of offensively, and then they played Fort Valley State, which they, the Division II opponent, they did well, and then they played fairly well against USF. So not a lot of data to really crunch because there's no there's not a lot of FCS games on these team schedules, and they haven't played very many games anyway. They both played 3 games on the season, so not a lot to really take for. And I'm not really going to crunch the numbers because the numbers aren't really lining up to who I think these teams are. Florida A&M, obviously, they have some guys who are big names at their positions. Marquise Bell, Collier, also in the secondary. Xavier Smith, who is one of the top receivers in the conference. Bishop Bonnet, who's a very solid running back. And they've run the ball better this year than they did in 2019, so that's a key factor. Obviously, quarterback is where this game is going to be decided at. Florida A&M defense is very good. They're aggressive. They're solid. They're going to hit you. And Alabama State's defense is very physical. And as you see against Bethune-Cookman, they can shut down the run game. Ryan Nettles is a guy who he doesn't have a lot of experience in college. He was injured in his senior year of high school, and then the missed 2020 season, and he played in the spring. I think they played 5 games, and he got hurt against Alabama A&M, so he didn't play every game in the season. And he was up and down in those games, but he has potential, and he probably had his best game of the season against Bethune-Cookman, but we still don't know if that's gonna be him all season. So he needs that consistency. Florida A&M's defense is gonna be a challenge for that. On the other side, FAMU's quarterback situation is muddled. I guess Rashawn McKay is back at quarterback. He's a guy who didn't look great against Jackson State, and then he looked okay. I heard reports that he looked pretty well against USF. So if that's the guy, then he has to take advantage of the receivers that they have, because they have a gang of guys that can make plays. They have a solid running game. They have to take advantage of that. Whoever can kind of find their way through the opposing defense is going to be the team I think is going to be successful in this game. This is a lower scoring game to me. This week, I don't see a lot of high scoring games this week, and this one is also probably a mid-20s type of game for me. If somebody's offense can get going, Alabama State has shown that against the FCS opponent, they can put points on the board and they can make some huge plays. So we have yet to see that from Florida A&M against a comparable opponent. So this is a tough game to pick, and that's one of the reasons why I think is the game of the week for a lot of people, because it can go either way. FAMU being at home is definitely a plus. I'm a little nervous about the quarterback situation, but if their line can give the quarterback time to get the ball in the hands of those receivers, I think they have a big advantage over the Alabama State secondary, who is good, but I think those receivers are better, and I think Florida A&M is going to find a way to win this game. Again, it's not going to be pretty. I'm thinking like I'm going to go an odd score, because I think there's going to be a couple odd plays in that, but I'm going to go 26-19. So I think this is going to be a weird type of game. Florida A&M, I think, will win it. But I think Alabama State has a great shot in this game if their defense shows up like they did against Bethune-Cookman. Florida A&M is basically in the same boat Bethune-Cookman is in right now. They cannot afford another conference loss. 0-2 this early in the season, it's going to be tough to get out of a hole when you have Jackson State and Alabama A&M setting the pace. So, you can ill afford a loss. Alabama State at 1-1, if they lose, is still in a pretty good spot, but that doesn't mean that they don't want to win. But I'm going FAMU in this one, and that's going to close out our Week 5 preview. Make sure to check out these games, man. If y'all going to games, let me know how the atmosphere is, and just be safe out there on the highways and at the games. So with that being said, I'm C. Wells signing out. Don't forget, tomorrow, 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern, live edition of Swag Smoke. Me and DJ, we're going to chop it up, recap Week 4 and preview Week 5. So don't miss it. And then tomorrow night, 6:30 p.m. Central, 7:30 Eastern, UAPB at Prairie View, 6:30 kickoff, as I said, ESPNU broadcast. Don't miss it. And that's it, man. I'm out. And I'll holler at you guys on Swag Smoke, and then I'll holler at you guys on Sunday with the Week 5 recap. Later.